everyone.
Hey guys, what's up? We're here still in Toronto, preparing for Rise for Water, and obviously the most important person to prepare is Lupe Voss, the star of the show, and she had gone to kind of, I think, Muppet territory with the hair that she had on her head, so we're going to cut it down. I'm going to do a really simple haircut here, but I think it's going to work beautifully for her. I've sectioned off above the parietal ridge on the top of the head, so just this flat panel. Within this rectangle, I'm going to start working horizontally and just over-directing back, so I cut a shorter guide at the crown, and then each section that I'm going to take until about mid-ear, I'm going to over-direct back to this point, so it's actually going to go shorter to longer. Then I'm going to repeat that again as I get closer to the bangs or the fringe area. So there'll be kind of two very subtle concaves on the top of the head, which I think will help to, number one, remove bulk, because Lupe's hair can get very expansive, can it, Lupe? But also keep movement by going from short to long with each section here. So just trying to work on the flat of the head on the top here, from above the parietal ridges, combing, over-directing back to the first section. You know, I'm tall enough that, you know, and Lupe is small enough and this chair goes down low enough that I can do this inside the hand. You can also do it over the hand, but I've got pretty big hands, and when I cut hair short over the hand, it feels kind of clumsy for me, but either one is acceptable. Whatever works for you. Just have a good, clean, even tension. I'm going to give her a nice, clean, technical shape, and then I'll texturize it a lot towards the end. You know, there's lots of different ways to go about this, but that's just the mood I was in at the moment. So Lupe, what are we doing here in Canada for anyone that's out there watching?
Are working.
Besides cutting this mo.
Well, you have to cut it because there's no way most people have a head of hair. I have a thatch of hair. It's
and a neck beard.
And a neck beard.
Yeah, that's one thing we have in common.
Gerard and I both have neck beards. It's weird. We're raising money.
We're trying.
We're trying to raise money, team. Yeah. We are here. We're raising money this weekend for Water Aid. All the proceeds go to Madagascar. And we have someone here that this event is dear to her heart. This is someone who's inspired us to donate our time. We have these amazing people on stage, and she's inspired these people.
Well, she's
to come
kind of organized the whole thing,
Yeah, she's inspired all of us. There's
the impetus of its creation, if that makes sense. I think that's a word, right?
We have Peter Gray, Frank Razzieri, Alan Ruiz for styling. For cutting, we have Gerard, we have Gino Chapman, and Tristan Morrison. And for hair color, we got an amazing hair color team. Daisy Kalina, Jen Roski, Vanessa Bianchi, and these are what we're going to be featuring are some new trends. And it was fun because we get to collaborate with each other, not only just with the cut team, but with the styling team and the color team. And we've got a lot of fun things to share tonight. So if you are in Toronto and you haven't purchased a ticket, you can get on www.riseforwater.com and you can purchase a ticket. Or if you're on there and you accidentally hit donate,
don't make it an accident. Do it on purpose.
If you accidentally hit donate, you can share some of your tips from this week.
Yeah, $5 goes a long way.
Yeah, Dar and I were talking earlier. She was telling me, you know, for us hairdressers, for us colorists, for us cutters, can you imagine doing your job without water? I mean, that's
especially clean water.
Especially clean water. Yeah, well, especially for colorists. Can you imagine that? So I want you guys to meet Dar.
Okay, so we're going to have Dar talk a little bit about the charity, but in the meantime, for those of you that are obviously watching the haircut, I did my first panel. I cut a guide at the crown, over-directed everything back. Now I'll cut another finger-length guide. I'm going to over-direct everything back, and then I'll do another one. At first, I thought I was just going to do it twice, but as I was going, I decided to do it 3 times. So I'm doing the second one. Very, very simple, just a horizontal section, over-directing about 4 or 5 sections back to the shortest section. So again, it'll just be short to long, and I think that it'll reduce bulk and create movement on the top of Lupe's head. In the meantime, let me introduce you to Darlene, how do you say your last name? Paguandes. And she is a big part of the team up here, but this is a special project that she's organized. And I think you've been over to Madagascar, haven't you?
I have. I have been to Madagascar twice.
So you've firsthand seen the needs of the people there. I would love for you to just talk a little bit about what that means.
So we're working this weekend to support WaterAid Canada, and what WaterAid Canada does is they bring safe water, sanitation, and hygiene education to the people who really need it the most. Specifically, this event will be supporting communities in Madagascar, and one of the villages that we focused on this year was called Serafamch. And Madagascar, most people don't know a ton about it, but Madagascar is actually one of the poorest countries in the world. It has a population of about 22 million people.
Wow, that's a lot of people.
It's a lot of people, and about half of them, at 11 million, do not have access to a safe water source. So we all know that water is life, and that we basically can't do anything on this planet without access to safe water. So what we're trying to do here is bring this most basic resource to the people who need it the most. And I think Gerard's mentioned it a couple times, but just $25 can actually provide one person living in Madagascar with safe water for life. So that's really all it takes.
So
What is
that,
$25?
Like, how is that possible? So that means that basically that like covers the cost of like a well that like they can kind of, you know,
It's
use?
sort of an international average of what it
Right.
costs to build different kinds of water sources. So water can come from rain collection, from mountain collection, from drilling. It can come from
So
many,
it's just
many
like an
sources.
average of what it would cost per person.
Exactly.
Which is, it's just wild to think that,
Yeah.
you know, that's actually a challenge in today's day and age when people will spend $25 on nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, things you won't even know what they are, and we've got people that don't even have water to drink.
Well, how much do we spend on a Starbucks a day?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so again, guys, thanks for joining. Of course, you know, we're trying to give away as much value as we can with education over the weekend. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm cutting Lupe's hair. I'm in my third channel. I cut a third finger length guide, and I'm over directing everything back to that. I've done it 3 times on the top of the head. Super, super simple, and I think effective. I can't say I've ever done this exactly before. I've done different variations of this kind of idea. So, you know, kind of going into it knowing that, you know, short to long 3 times should leave, the longer parts should have movement, and the shorter parts with Lupe's texture, cutting them down short enough, it kind of takes out the wave, which takes out some of the poof. So we should have some interesting movement on the top of the head. You can see here, lots of tension. I chose to cut clean. I could have point cut, razor cut, done anything, but I just kind of went with my feeling to cut clean, put a technical shape in. I think especially since I'm using the kind of disconnections to make the shape, you know, I think if I would have been maybe too freehand or something, it would have like lost it right away.
That's what I'm talking about.
So you can see the effect here. There's some length, and you know, obviously the goal is to make it all seamless. I don't want it to look like 3 short to long panels, and that seems to be working. All right, now I need to think about how to kind of come around the rest to tie it in. And I don't necessarily need these areas to have those kind of channels in them. So I'm gonna kind of just technically layer those in a square way. So gonna continue, I'll put a guideline here in the crown. And I'll bring this hair up. And again, start to cut a square line. It's a new guideline, one that I think, you know, it's longer than the shortest one I cut in the crown here, but one that when I come over to square off the side, I think will give her a nice shape. So coming through vertically, using kind of classic square layering where I bring this up to the top. You can do this over the hand, or, you know, if you have the height, you can do it inside the hand, like that. Either way, sometimes I do a little bit of both. Often I do a little bit of both, so I have different perspectives on what I'm doing. I can kind of come through like this, and square this off, and then maybe have another look at it, square it off, working through. So what's your team been working on, Lupe, while you've been here?
So we have, actually, hey Dark, come on over. Explain what's happening today, like who we're working with, and how we have our designers, how we have our hairdressers, and how next year when these people are looking to say, oh my God, this is so cool, and they want to come and do this, and then I'll talk about what each of our segments do.
Okay, so today we have a lot of things happening in the show. One of the biggest parts of it is that we
Is
partnered...
Lupe's haircut?
This is
Lupe's
it.
haircut,
Right here.
obviously.
Right here.
And we have partnered with a company called Montpellier Fashion, and they are sponsoring a fashion competition for local Toronto designers. So we have 23 up-and-coming fashion designers who have created a unique couture piece out of thread fabric. And thread fabric is actually made out of recycled plastic bottles, which is really, really cool, and you'll see a lot of it later on. And what they're competing for is the chance to have their entire first collection produced by Montpellier. So it's a huge, huge prize for any up-and-coming fashion designer in Toronto. And we are
How
filled.
did you guys find all the designers?
Christina from Montpellier actually connected with the fashion community here and found all of them.
So if you're a designer,
If you're a designer, next year you have an amazing opportunity to potentially have your very first collection produced in Toronto,
So
which is
all these
amazing.
young designers get to work with the team of hairdressers that are here kind of taking the course, and it's being led by Peter Gray and Frank Rosieri and Alan Ruiz, guys that travel all over the world and do top fashion shows and top editorial shoots. So it's actually a great experience for everyone. All right, haircut wise, I'll turn around so it's easier for you. I've moved into the other side. Again, hey Darlene, can you do me a favor?
Sure
Can you watch on your phone and see if there's any questions?
Absolutely,
Yep.
I'm gonna go grab it.
So coming through, sectioning off above the round of the head again, now the whole parietal or the side of the head, the temple. I'm coming through, I created a new guideline. It doesn't connect with what I did through the center top, but I'm just imagining like a square line out to infinity and beyond, you know? So you're just carrying this basic square line out. You can work inside the hand or over the hand, whatever your comfort level is here, as long as you take clean sections and have good even tension. I let the sections pivot a little bit because of the way Lupe's hair grows towards the face. It's quite thick and it grows forward, so I'm just kind of working with it and just kind of pivoting my way right around into here and layering through. So at this point I've basically layered the top center of the head with these 3 panels. They were about yay big, 1, 2, 3. Short guide, over direct, short guide, over direct, short guide, over direct. The idea is to take out all the weight, but leave all the movement. Now I've extended out 2 square lines here. Now the next step, again, continuing into classic kind of square layering, so to speak. Nice and slim and head hugging. I'll come in through here. I'll get all this out of the way, and there'll be a pivot point from what I cut here. So this area on the round of the head, I just cut a traditional square line. Now I'm going to pivot it over and decide where I want my guide to come from. It's going to work from about the back of the ear, section a little diagonal forward for comfort. Now as I bring that some of the disconnected longer hair, I want to push that out of the way. We don't want to cut that, but I want to come through here and I want to find my pivot point, so to speak, and I want to sit this in to about a finger's length by the top of the ear.
We have a question, Gerard,
Okay.
from Christina. She's asking, are these concave layers on the side?
No. The concave layers were on the top of the head.
Okay.
These are just basic, what most people would call square layers. So that just means flat to the head. I'm just cutting square to the head. I kind of had it up here, then I pivoted over there. So the top has concave because they're short to long 3 times. Concave is, you know, going kind of against the head shape, or, you know, building length away from the head shape, which is what I did on the top 3 times. Here now I'm just cutting fairly traditional square to the head. Thanks for the question. Yeah, guys, any other questions that you have would be wonderful. We love questions.
Did someone ask what the website is? It's www.riseforwater.com.
And what does that mean, Lupe, for people? Because so many people are just joining, they don't have any clue what we're talking about.
That's the website that you can go to and donate for our event this weekend. We're raising money for clean water for Madagascar.
So as little as $5 can make a huge difference, you know. So there you can see that panel of layering. I'm going to turn around and look in the mirror because I have the luxury of having this mirror. Great, we've got that length and movement on the top, starting to sit this in. A little bit of weight built up there from the corner. Now I'm going to do the same over on this side. We're going to tuck this in. Again, from above the round of the head here, I've already kind of cut, there's the disconnection behind it. But right here I cut a technical square line. This disconnection up here is to create movement through the center top. So she doesn't just have a basic crop. It's going to have a little bit more dimension than that. Now we're going to come into this side, this temple area, and I'm going to layer through using the guide, the pivot point from the top. Again, we encourage any of your questions about what's happening here. If you saw, we've got a bunch of videos over the past 2 days. Yesterday we had a kind of a Master Jam demo with myself and Tristan Morrison and Gino Chapman. You guys can go back and watch that. We had 3 haircuts going at the same time for over an hour. We spent some time with Peter Gray doing a photo shoot and doing some of his editorial kind of preparation work. Those are all in the feed. We spent some time this morning with Lupe talking about coloring hair wefts, which was really, really awesome because they're so important in fashion and photographic work, and being able to color them well is super important. And now we're doing some hair cutting. So again, took the guide from the top, working through nice and clean. You know, just because you're cutting short doesn't mean you should just kind of blast it off. Clean sections, use your thumb instead of a clip so you can work neatly and quickly, and then flick that hair right onto your fingers, follow the guide, and cut it in nice and tight. Working through. Again, let my sections just pivot a little bit with the way our hairline grows so I can get into this area in a nice natural flow. Again, if you have any questions, or Darlene, if you see any good questions, we love questions. That's what keeps us going.
Just loading up here.
Okay.
So a little bit about what we did today for hair color is we have our strong team. We have Daisy Kalina, Vanessa Bianchi, and Jen Roski. And we're working with the hairdressers who this morning, when the designers came in, they've been collaborating for the last few weeks. And then this morning they had another consultation, and we have these amazing models. And I can't wait for the images to pop up. They're absolutely gorgeous. And what we did for color is consulting with the hairdressers after they're finished consulting with the designers. We started creating wefts and wigs, and these wefts, I have to say, I have to have a big shout out to Easy Hair Pro. If you've never worked with this hair, it's amazing. It colors really easily, and the color lasts, and it just takes the color well. So Easy Hair Pro donated all of their wigs and hair pieces for this event, and I think it's a lot of money that they handed over, and I really, really appreciate it because we couldn't do this without you.
Okay, so in terms of the haircut now, the same thing that I did in through here. So again, we had a center like rectangle above the round of the head that we cut a short guide, over directed, did that 3 times, so it's short to long 3 times, sometimes what people call concaves, removing weight, creating movement. Then around it, we're doing traditional square layering. So we're gonna do the same thing in the back here. I'm gonna start off by getting rid of the shorter hair at the crown. I'm gonna come here, bring this up, and cutting a square line infinitely. And then I'll make the pivot beneath it to layer into the bottom. So this is longer than the hair that's in front, right and directly in front of it, because that hair was cut very, very short, just one section to kind of give channels into the Lupe's very thick hair on the top. So just taking a very simple technique, and that's usually what works best for me. I don't try to overly complicate things. I just had a little bit of fun with the top, that little top area. And then all this is just very, very simple, clean square layering. Cutting inside the hand because the chair goes pretty low and I'm pretty tall, so I can do it very easily. And I find that it gives me nice control, especially having large hands. You know, sometimes, I mean, obviously we do have to cut over the hand, but then I have all this stuff to deal with. All those big kind of chunky sausage fingers. We're here, you know, and I learned that from one of my mentors, Tim Hartley. You know, most people with smaller hands have a very easy time working over the hand, but sometimes if you've got bigger hands, working inside the hand on the top. So for any of my brothers out there with big sausage hands, or sisters, I've come across a few, a big hand crew, try it. Now, working into the back, same idea. It's like a pivot point. If this hair was brought up and cut square, we're gonna pivot that down. Gonna get rid of some of that stuff on the top. Now starting from the center back, I'm gonna work forward. I'm not gonna work very, very square this way because I don't feel any need to build a major corner here. I'm gonna work from the center out and follow the head until I get to the back of the ear. Come through, get rid of some of that disconnected excess length. Carefully. You can find the guide right here. And I like to, rather than working all the way into the bottom, because It's a lot of hair to deal with. I'm going to work across in segments. I'll work just consistently across. You could work top to bottom. I'm working side to side. Also, because I know Lupe's hairline, when I get to the bottom, I like to use a little trick to help it sit a little better.
It's a beast.
It's a beast. Working my way around, section by section. No real over direction deliberately. My goal is to meet up by the back of the ear. Thinking about what the sectioning was like here, getting rid of some of that extra hair that's disconnected at the top, and working my way through. Fine vertical sections. I want to be able to see my guide clearly. And just working through this zone of the head, and then I'll come back and work lower and work down into the hairline. I should start to meet up with some of the previously cut hair. You can obviously see it as you're working, and then you should start to connect the two together. Probably not much more to cut after this point. You can see it's kind of connected. And giving it always, you know, visual. Obviously it's important to work technical, but it's just as important to work visually. So moving that hair around, starting to imagine some of the final steps, the final details. Now I'll work down into this next zone. Do you want to come back this way with the camera? Is it easier for you? Yeah. So now I'm basically going to do exactly the same thing. I'm going to work down a little lower. Use the guide from the top. But what I'm going to start to do before I cut is shift up. That's going to help me with Lupe's hairline. These middle panel and the hairline panel, as I cut, I'll shift up away from it. It'll help it lay down flatter and have a softer texture.
We have a question.
Hallelujah.
From Dola. Vertical sections on the back, are they parallel or over directed?
The sections are parallel, and I'm not over directing. Yeah, because I don't want to really build a corner or a lot of weight behind the ear. So, you know, they're kind of what sometimes we call radial, a little bit more organic. If you were to draw them all back, they would come like a, I guess a soccer ball does that, or an orange peel. So they're not truly vertical, because I am working with their head shape a little bit more. And the key thing here is I get lower. Before I cut, I shift the hair up slightly. It's just a subtle thing. It helps the hairlines around the edge lay flatter and softer.
Yeah, I could feel you when you're pulling up.
Pulling it up.
Slightly.
Yeah. Every once in a while, moving it around. She's such a cute little monkey. Look at her.
Oh, if I were an animal, I would be a monkey.
No doubt.
Yes.
Do you know what your Chinese like zodiac sign
I think
is?
I'm a rat.
I think I'm a rat too. Someone
right
told me
on,
that the
buddy.
other day.
Yeah.
But they say that's a good thing.
It is?
Yeah, that's what I've
Rats are
heard.
good?
That's what I've heard. All right, now coming into this final panel. So I went 1, 2, now 3, and this is where the beast is unleashed.
Dun, dun, dun.
So I'm going to go even a little more diagonal. Obviously, it helps me sit my hand in here a little bit more. I can see the guide from the top, and I really shift up. So when that comes back into place, it leaves a little more hair towards the edge, and I find helps hairlines like Lupe's to be a little bit easier to deal with. Subtle little trick that I find really helps me. Working through. You know, it's short already, so I'll have to just be really meticulous in my sectioning and my control, use my thumb, the comb, good tension, and really get a nice flow happening here. So for those of you that are just joining us, you know, we've been here all weekend in Toronto, really working on something that's dear to our heart. We're trying to raise money for clean water for WaterAid Canada, and they go over to Madagascar and different places in Africa to help establish and build wells. I want to introduce you guys to Darlene. She has pretty much coordinated this whole effort here, and she can tell you a little bit more about the process and where the donations go and what it's all about. Thanks, Darlene.
So WaterAid Canada will work with our team, the WaterAid Madagascar team, to bring a fresh water source or multiple fresh water sources into villages. An example of a village that we work specifically with this year is called Sarapanch, and Sarapanch is home to about 508 people who currently walk about 3 hours per day to get to a water source that is completely unhealthy and not safe for anybody in their families. And one thing that is really important to note is that women are truly the most affected by this crisis, and it is a worldwide water crisis. And women spend up to 3 hours a day going to fetch water from a dangerous source. And one of the things that I like to talk about is imagine what you would do with 3 extra hours per day, and how many times a day you wish you just had more time in a day.
Since it's women, that's like 10 extra hours a day for men, right? Because you guys get a lot more done than we do.
So what we're doing when we're providing access to safe water is we're not only helping people live a healthier life and a longer life, but we're also giving back time to women so that they can spend more time with their families, so that they can find other opportunities for earning an income, and overall everybody in a community benefits by being healthier. So
and I just think these are some of the poorest people in the world, and we all know time is money. So if they had 3 extra hours a day, imagine how much more they could provide for their families, you know? Imagine how it would change the economies in those countries. I mean, if you really want to start thinking about it, you know, and as we said, I wasn't joking at all. I think women are obviously very productive, not to judge, but in general, they're more productive than men. That's my wife.
How much do is it the jerry cans that they fill up and bring back?
Yeah, so a jerry can, which is basically a diesel can, it's about 20 liters, and when it's filled with water, it's the primary way that people collect in developing countries. And when it's filled, it weighs about 44 pounds. So in some cases, if young girls are responsible for collecting the water, it really weighs just about as much as they do. And they're carrying it on their backs and on their heads, and it obviously is very detrimental to their health and their development, even in terms of how they're growing up. So. It is a very difficult task that I've actually performed myself, and as a grown woman on 3 meals a day and 2 liters of clean water, I could barely complete the task that many 8-year-olds have to complete multiple times a day. So it's
that's why we're all here doing what we're doing. That's why all these hairdressers have donated their time, and some of the people here have actually paid to be here. They've donated money to be on the teams that are doing the hair for the fashion show, and again, all that money is going to be donated. How much did you guys raise last year in your first effort?
$28,000 last year.
And the goal this year?
$50,000.
$50,000. How are we doing on the goal?
We're aiming high.
How are we doing?
Well, last I checked on ticket sales, we were probably about the 25. We were probably at the 50% mark. So.
Right. So we really need people to just go to riseforwater.com and just donate $5. Imagine if 1,000 of you guys did that.
That'd be amazing.
Right now, what the difference would be. So again, thanks, Darlene, and keep on lookout for any questions. Sometimes we do have connection issues, but this will we'll be able to relaunch this as soon as we're done, and people will be able to watch it. Okay, so again, coming into that final panel in the back here. And this one's obviously super important. The thing is, if I cut this really short quickly, then I'm going to have to scissor over comb it. And I just don't think that would be very feminine for Lupe. So by shifting up, I keep a little more stuff to play with, and then I can get in here later, do some undercutting, use some softening or texturizing scissors, and try to help that hair to lay down in a softer, prettier way, at least what I think is softer and prettier. So again, it just gives me another option. So when you're working with tricky hairlines like this, you either have to leave them long enough that, they can behave, or cut them short enough that it doesn't really matter. So I'm trying to find that area where I'm leaving enough length that I can groom it, but not have to go so short and kind of taper it out, scissor over comb. But that is an option, and it could look good, but Lupe and I have decided, that that's not the right look for her. We've done it before when she's had like a much longer top. Where this was really, really tight and then the top was long. But now that it's kind of short all over, we're trying to keep a little bit more of that, softness around the edges. Coming around into the sides here.
There was another question, actually.
Let's hear it.
What's the difference from starting at the back plot section from starting at the crown areas?
I did start in the crown. I started the cut right here initially, and I worked forward, and then I layered the crown, and then I started right here in the center, and I worked my way around. The difference for me, I didn't overthink it. I kind of went with just simple. What was easiest to control for me was on the sides, working from the back of the ear forward, and then from the center, working from the center around the head into it. Basically the underneath, I'm trying to follow the head shape. I didn't build an excessively round or square shape or anything like that. All right, so now checking, and this is going to probably be subtle but super important. So I start to come up over the head. I want to get some of that disconnected hair out of the way, and I want to begin to bring this hair up. So by cross-checking over the head, I'm bringing the hair up higher than it was cut originally and softening it and helping it to lay down again flatter. So it's a crucial part of the haircut, even though it's a simple part, super crucial, especially as I get down into the bottom. Reach over the head, comb up, and check into it, especially down here. And I can get any like little bumps or finger marks and clean those up. And again, I want to keep that long so I can later. You're kind of thinking a few steps ahead. It's like a chess game sometimes, short hair. You have to think about where you want to be and how many steps it's going to take to get there, because sometimes if you just go right into those steps, it can be abrupt, you know, which is why I haven't gone in and attacked the hairline yet. I want to get the internal shape right before I go anywhere near it. Working my way through. Got a couple of our good buddies here. Why don't you guys come over? Tristan and Gino. Yeah. So, you know, the whole beauty of this event that Lupe and Darlene and Peter Gray organized was they called on their friends.
Hey guys.
There's a couple of our friends. You guys want to talk about what you've been doing?
You know, we've been really just supporting everybody, and right now I'm doing figure eights, I think they're called, so weaving some hair that the guys are going to use for some of their designs tonight, and you know, looking forward tonight to cut some hair with these guys. And
Well, we're going to be on stage together, aren't we?
We're going to be on stage together. It'll be their first time on stage since I think like a beta days when
Avita?
yeah, exactly.
A big stage together, yeah. A big
Exactly.
stage.
So looking forward to that. We're just really kind of here to raise money for a great cause. You know, to give back to people that are really need clean water.
And who doesn't need clean water, you know? It's like, it's a shame that people really don't have access to clean water. What kind of world do we live in? And what about this handsome Hawaiian?
Well, this Hawaiian.
Hey,
Yeah, just coming back from upstairs. We're doing more hair. As you can see down here, there's a haircut going on and more prepping of hair. But upstairs, there's a lot of students, a lot of models. Again, everything for a great cause for the show tonight. A lot of designers going on, a lot of eco-friendly designers. And again, just making sure that this evening is all about giving back, but also inspired by the craft, also inspired by the designers and what they're doing with the clothing. So it's, I think it's a win-win situation for everybody this evening, or this weekend, I should say.
All right, thanks, fellas. And again, progressing here. I think I've got my whole basic shape in. I was cross-checking. I'm liking the way that it's going. It's kind of what I hoped it would be. A little more movement in the top and maybe some unexpected stuff when you style it. This is nice and lean. Now I have to go, you know, on some people it gets easy from here, but on Lupe it gets kind of tricky because I want to work on this to try to make it look the best that I can.
Nothing is ever easy.
So I'm about to dive into the back here. You know, first I'm going to start to undercut some of this growth, just using the scissor. You could come in with a clipper and edger, and maybe I will later, but I like to work very, very slowly into that. So the hair kind of beneath, we want to remove, and if I'm going to use a clipper and edger on anything, it's right here. But this hair, I don't want to remove, or the hairline could get a little bit too harsh looking. I want to chisel and use the point of the scissor to help it to push into its natural growth while still having some hair that can lay on top of it. So just kind of chiseling, sculpting, pushing in. Literally the best way I can describe it is like chiseling. I'm using the tip, the sharpness of the scissor to get this undergrowth to try to lay down, and then checking that the hair on top can lay into it, and then I can start to remove some weight but keep the edge long. So this is just kind of, you know, spend a little bit of time will be spent here, and I'll probably use various tools to tame this beast, but going slowly a little bit at a time, working in. You know, again, it's all about the subtlety. Yes, Mr. Peter, you gonna take over? Let's say what Peter wants to do to the hairline. Keep it soft.
Come on,
You
keep
keep
it
talking
soft.
about switching.
Keep it soft. Oh, you want to talk about her hairline?
Lucas,
Everybody,
say
this
hi.
is Peter Gray. He's been
All right.
upstairs leading the mayhem, and
Hey,
now he
guys.
wants to do some cutting. So
Okay.
don't take that all off. I'll
Don't
kill
take it
you.
off. Okay, so the way I like to work a hairline is just like let it work as it's working naturally. And because I've cut Lupe's hair before, what I do is just cut a few channels in it. So you lighten it in and you go in against the grain. So you're not actually destroying the hairline. So when it grows back, you just cut a few channels, follow the shape of it as it whirls there.
Interesting. Mini micro channels.
Like literally, like a micro channel. And all you do, you just rotate, work up and down it. And you're not actually taking it off. Because you're working in a channel, you're just diffusing it.
I like that.
Yeah. So then you get, it just kind of gives you like a really good fade. And if you're doing barbering, it's a really fantastic way to barber. What to do with the guys, if I get them to move forward, rest their head and the legs. The guys are super uncomfortable when in this kind of position. And then you just, you know, when a guy's hairline grows down super strongly or across super strongly, and you can just work into where the hair grows forward like that. You work in a channel in the opposite direction, and you just work into it. So you're not actually cutting it away, you're just lightening it. And what you find is you get a fantastic fade through when it grows back.
I love it, Peter. Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks, Loops.
Up, going upstairs. Say hi to everybody.
Hang in display.
Come here. Say hi to everyone.
Yeah. We're
Hey?
so these are really the
Are you
organizers
on
of.
an HB?
Yeah.
These are really the organizers of, you know, the impetus with Gloom with Darlene. They kicked this whole thing off. Peter Gray, Lupe Voss. They invited us. Peter's upstairs working with about 100 hairdressers. Like,
This was our small education
This
class.
was our look and learn. Our
This was our little
and
look and learn with like, what did we say, 12 people I
12
think initially?
people, yeah.
So 12 people, really intimate look and learn.
and how many did it turn out to be?
25.
Well, we've 25, plus we've got 45 models, plus we've got 25 designers, we've got 2 artists who are pure artists working in found reclaimed plastic materials. They're actually working on mannequins because their ideas were that far out, but I was like, there's no practical way of actually incorporating this.
Like
onto
what?
the
Like
human
what?
body.
What kind of things were they doing?
I can give a leak on the one I've seen.
Let's hear it.
She's blow torching plastic lunch plates. You know when you go on location, when you work on location, we
Right,
get given
right.
our food in plastic lunch plates.
Right, which are probably the worst things in the
I mean,
universe.
super disposable. It's just as bad as plastic bottles. And with the whole threads thing, we were like looking at a way of reclaiming it.
Can
And
you talk about the threads
Talk about
thing?
threads.
Yeah, because I think that's super interesting that these guys had to work with a certain type of fabric.
threads is a game changer. Okay, until now, threads fabric it's basically 100% PET fabric. Made from reclaimed bottles. Bottles actually come from Haiti, and the guy who actually founded Threads came up with this idea because he was just like, there's so much garbage in Haiti, and if only they could turn this garbage into money. And most of it just ends up in landfill, and obviously it's an island, so it doesn't even end up as a landfill. It just ends up, being pushed out to sea, literally taken out from boats and dumped at sea, which is crazy, dumping plastic bottles at sea.
Yeah, I've seen some images about like, you know,
It's
just,
insane, isn't it?
Yeah,
I mean, we've
filled
got
with-
some amazing video footage on it.
yeah.
Just
Really
mountains
disturbing,
of it, literally miles and miles of this, and it all coagulates and comes together. The confluence, where the currents confluence across the world, in the middle of this oceans, all these bottles just kind of come together, and all this plastic bags, bottles, any sort of garbage just comes together on these lines. And what it's doing is killing all the fish life, all the sea life in a massive radius around it. It's super toxic. So what these guys have done is they've worked on how to turn this, take the bottles, they crush them down, and then turn it into a thread, and they're taking that thread and turning it into fabric. They're on the 2nd or 3rd generation of fabric now, at which point the 2nd generation is almost, it's like a soft canvas. It's already been made into t-shirts by a number of designers. Timberland is using it, Adidas is using it for shoes and bags. And what we wanted to do is be the first to kind of bring it to kind of a more pure level of fashion, like real fashion, especially couture. So we've got these 23 young designers all competing for a prize of a capsule collection.
And if there's anyone that knows design or how for next year, is there any way to,
Absolutely.
how would they
Yeah.
get involved?
We're broadening this out, and it's getting, I mean, look, we've grown exponentially from Frank and myself doing it to, I think we've got 12 teachers this year working on it.
Yep.
So it's like, last year was Frank, myself, and Lupe, and we're at 12 teachers coming up from North America now. So we've got like a really fantastic buzz going. And the best thing about this all is not only do you have feel-good fabric, that feel-good thing about the fabric that we're recycling, we're contributing to the whole eco way, but it's taking eco out of the world of granola. nobody wants, I love eco, but I can't stand the idea of granola. I don't want to walk around in hemp sack and not feel like it's cool. You want something that feels cool and relevant to the world of fashion. You want to challenge designers to produce something with this fabric.
And it's an excellent opportunity for designers to feature some of their work.
They get to show on the catwalk. They get an individual consultation with a colorist, a makeup artist, and a hairdresser. And we're all cross-pollinating, so we're getting pieces like made for the designer. We're getting hair pieces made for every single one of those 25 designers upstairs. And the best thing of all is all the money raised, absolutely every cent. Everybody's flowing themselves in, everybody's put themselves up, every single cent is going back to WaterAid, and it's actually going through to these wells that have been built by Tavello and Veda Canada in Madagascar, and they physically are being there. The money's not being diverted. It's directly affecting people's lives. $25 changes a person's access to water for life.
And if anyone watching wants to donate, Peter, they should go to Rise for Water.
www.riseforwater.com. Top button is donate. As little as $5. We're starting at $5. I wanted to make it. I'd rather the 50,000 people gave $5 each than one person kind of felt the need to, $100. Nobody wants to donate $100. You will get a portion of it back on tax, of course. But $5, who can't afford $5? And that was our kind of idea. It's a Starbucks coffee in the morning. Go one morning without, or go one evening without. And that's how our approach to it was rather get aggregated. And we've got, 275,000 people on Hairbrained. Guys, come on, you can do it. $5 each, and we're going to rack it up. We've got a goal of 50 grand. We did 28 grand last year, and I reckon we're going to tear it up. And in addition to that, we're having a blast doing it. We're doing some killer hair.
Everybody's so inspired, and we're working off each other. I learned something. I never quite saw, what Peter was doing before. I've never really thought about that before, what he was doing on the hairline. So it's been worth it for me. I've been carrying on, since he came over and had his golden moment and worked on my hairline. I continued, and then I switched to what well, we had a funny thing about this yesterday. People are so particular about whether it's a scissor or a shear. Okay. We decided to call them shearsers. Shearsers.
And how are you finding that? Are you going across? Are you combing them across?
At this point I'm working very kind of visually. I break it down, and I come through with these. These ones are brilliant because they really
serrated on both sides.
They're serrated on one side and totally dull on here.
Yeah, perfect.
So they work really kind of beautifully for this, and I just look. I'm trying to keep that length on the edge, but take out the bulk because it also gets thicker down here, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And we don't want it.
And the great thing about that is when it kind of diffuses itself when it grows out.
Yes. So I don't want it to look really thick in the nape, even though we've got that length there. And it looks like in the mirror it's looking good. Sitting in
You're going to look like a lady when that grows out.
I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but you can see it in real life, the difference between the thickness here and here. It actually makes a huge difference. Yeah. Where here, where I haven't, done anything to the density yet, it's still quite thick. So I'm walking in. Again, this is a very special scissor. These are some that I got in Japan from the Hikari factory. They're called Angel 771s. I'm not even sure they have them in the U.S., to be honest. But there's definitely companies have similar things. One of the blades is totally dull, and then these are serrated. And I just find they work beautifully for this. I'd never had anything quite like that before. And for this kind of work, they work just so beautifully. Even where she gets a little thicker and it starts to wave, it just breaks it down enough that it took out that little ripple there. Little
you tried
details.
Using these mid to ends and texturizing mid to ends?
Oh yeah, I use them for everything. I've gotten to, the way that I got them was I was at the Hikari factory and I was asking them about razors, and they definitely do not approve of razors, so they gave me these and said, you must use these, never use a razor again.
Fantastic.
But I still use plenty of razor cutting. But the idea is that it would cut like a razor, where you would be with your razor getting little strokes.
I like it.
Yeah, it's working well, right?
Oh, no, it just softens it out in the same way as cutting the channels.
Yeah, and of course you could point and do all this, but for us, people like me and Peter and Lupe, all veterans, 25 plus years, I think we'll all agree that the more ways you know to do things, the more you'll stay interested. And if you become dogmatic and say, I'll never do this and I'll never use that,
that's when your craft starts to die.
It is, isn't it? It's the biggest challenge that people have.
Will you speak to the audience about next year if they want to participate as a stylist to work with a designer. Will you speak to that?
Well, next year, hopefully, we're going to open this up to North America too.
The U.S. you mean? Because
The US,
this is
yeah,
North
sorry,
America.
America as well, the US, but hoping that no wall gets built this far north anyway. But anyway, we're hoping to open up to designers. I'd like to bring in more of an international hairdressing contingent. We've talked to Sharon Blaine. She's very interested in coming along.
Ooh.
I'm going to rope in Richard Ashworth and the Expressions lads and kind of really get it going and kind of get this collaboration with the designers. And I think for me, really, it's kind of taking hair and taking it from being isolated as a hairdresser thing and incorporating it incorporating it into the kind of world of fashion and making hairdressers fashion savvy and making designers aware of hair in a completely different way rather than being so safe.
Awesome. I think that this is really coming together now. Hopefully you guys can see that. You know, just kind of cut right into the shape. I love the uncut quality of the hair around and in front of the ears, personally. I think it keeps it soft and feminine. This is groomed enough that it seems like it's going to grow in well. I probably would spend some time in the back mirror here looking at density and darkness and trying to get it to feel kind of blended from both sides. Could probably spend a couple more minutes doing that. You can see the effect of the channels on the top. There's no product in her hair, and you can see this cool texture that's happening and how I've kind of detailed the edge a little bit. Probably play around here for a couple more minutes, but I think that we've got the lesson in, and I'd like to thank you all for tuning in and joining us, and I'd like to really ask you to please consider donating something. $5 is the minimum. You know, for all of you guys that are watching, that watch us all the time, we've dedicated our lives to giving to other hairdressers. Education, value. Very rarely do we charge for anything, and we're not going to charge for this kind of video education. I think that should always be something that's accessible, but we will ask you, please, if you want to support us, think about making that donation to riseforwater.com and make a difference in the life of people. Thank you very much for tuning in.
Thank you.
Peace out.
Bye.